All right, and we're back once again with the Lakers Fast Break podcast. It's Gerald Glassford coming right back at you here from Lakers Fast Break, Pop Culture Cosmos, Inside Sports Fantasy Football, and Game Source. We truly appreciate everyone out there listening to all of our shows, and if you can, please give us that 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Plus, if you can like, share, subscribe, follow, or do anything that you can to support us right here at the Lakers Fast Break or NBA Draft Junkies, because my guest is back, the awesome one indeed. He is back once again. If you can go ahead and support his awesome channel, NBA Draft Junkies, it is truly appreciated. It is the man indeed. It is Rafael Barlowe. And Rafael, thanks for coming back on the West Coast per se this time around.
Yeah, I'm in Los Angeles right now. A weird day to be in LA, but
yes,
I'm here. So.
Absolutely a weird day indeed, but because it is still the 1-year anniversary of the passing of Kobe Bryant and Gigi Bryant, along with several others in a tragic helicopter crash in Calabasas. I appreciate, again, you taking the time out of your busy schedule to go ahead and speak to me on this, I guess, remembering day that, especially like you said, the city of Los Angeles and basketball fans around the world who suffered another loss today with the passing of Sekou Smith from the effects of COVID, just devastating as far as from a basketball journalism standpoint. As someone who is very familiar with his work, I'm truly saddened by his death, and my respects to his family. But 1 year later, I know he would have talked about himself, the passing of Kobe Bryant. So I want to hear your thoughts, man, on 1 year later, how you've been handling, and have you been talking and reaching out to people about what's going on with like I said, people remembering the 1 year anniversary of the death of Kobe Bryant?
Well, first I want to talk about Sekou. We actually went to the same college.
Okay.
He graduated the spring before I got there, but we had the same major, and his name was something that I would often hear where people were saying, like, you have to meet Sekou. He's similar to you. He a big sports junkie. So a friend of mine wrote a tribute to him on his Instagram, and he was saying how like when guys went to parties, Sekou would stay behind to write articles. If there was stuff going on campus that, just college stuff, Sekou would stay behind to watch sports. And so he had mentioned that he said that we're similar in that aspect. So I had a chance to meet him at a wedding. It's probably like 15 years ago. Because like I said, I heard his name. One of my professors would tell me, hey, you need to reach out to Sekou. I think this at the time he was writing for the Clarion Ledger in Jackson, Mississippi. So I reached out to him. I was still a college student. He responded. And then when I actually met him, probably maybe 5 or 6 years later, he remembered me and we talked, but, it was brief. It was at a wedding. And so just, as a guy that came from the same journalism school that I went to, he was someone that I always admired. And so we definitely shared some mutual friends. So it's kind of tough to see, to see him pass at such a young age with a wife and 3 kids. And then just for it to be like, the 1 year anniversary of Kobe's passing, it's going to be a rough day for the rest of our lives for those that knew him and knew Kobe. So as far as Kobe, man, I was actually tweeted where I was. I think it's one of those things where everyone remembers where they were when they heard it. And I mean, I've mentioned the story before, but I was in Beijing. I was knocked out sleep. I want to say it was like 5 o'clock in the morning. And a friend of mine who I don't talk to often, she just sent me a text through WhatsApp and it said, oh my gosh, capital OMG, Rafael, are you awake? And I thought, like, she knows I'm in China. And then as soon as I looked to my phone to respond and ask what happened, I got the notification. I don't know if it was from the NBA app or it had to have been the NBA app. And I remember just sitting there, like, just kind of frozen for like nearly 2 hours. And it was a weird time for me because it's like the Chinese New Year. So I was in China, like I said, and all the other American players had left for the holiday. And then this is when we first started hearing about the coronavirus or whatever. And, I was trying to make a decision, like, do I go home or should I stay? Do I wait this out? And I had, and I was struggling because I came to LA for Christmas break. So I was struggling getting my sleeping pattern back. So that's why I chose to stay in China during that time. So I always remembered as this time where I was like isolated for a week. Everything in China was shut down. I wasn't like speaking to anybody for a whole day because there's nobody to communicate with. And then just being in like, this apartment by myself in the foreign country. And all day long, it's like thinking like just in shock, like, no, not Kobe, like this. And then trying to watch like they didn't have ESPN over there. So the only channel I could watch was CNN. And, they talked about it a lot too. But I think also at that time, the Trump impeachment was going on. So that kind of dominated the headlines. But also it was kind of sad because of everything that was going on in China at that time. His massive fan base in China didn't get a chance to come together and grieve. Like, I mean, I say if there is a positive thing is that when I got back to the States on February 1st, I went down to the Staples Center, and at least the fans in Los Angeles were able to come together and grieve and, go up to the Staples Centers and kind of pay their tribute. And, if it would have happened at a later time, then, Americans would not have been able to do that. But in China, they didn't get a chance to, like, nobody could go outside. So,
yeah.
But yeah, it was a day, and I'll never forget. And I'll close at this part. So when I landed, I'm flying Beijing, and when I leave, I'm trying to watch the Blazers-Lakers game. So it's the first game after everything that happened, and I'm watching like the pregame tribute, and then right before the game started is when my flight took off. So the whole flight, I'm just like thinking about, am I coming back in a couple of weeks? And are they going to quarantine me for 2 weeks as soon as I land in the States? On top of all the Kobe stuff, like when I wake up from this nap on this plane, it's not going to be true. Then I remember flying over. So then, when you're flying, you're looking out the window. I'm like, oh, I hope I don't see like the crash site. But what really hit me was when I landed in LA and I got off the plane, and then on the 405, there was like this huge, it was like a construction that they were building, but on the top of the crane, they had like this massive number 8 jersey. It was probably, I don't know, I can't even imagine. It's probably like 60 feet long. But that's when it really, really hit me like, okay, this is real. And I was able to go down to the memorial at the Staples Center, just seeing people grieving and crying and seeing the murals, and, it's just hard to imagine. And I knew like going forward, this day was going to be a day that was going to be tough. I've actually kind of avoided watching ESPN and watching all the games and stuff like that. So it's already tough enough just seeing the pictures on social media.
Absolutely, my friend. It's been tough for a lot of people. It's been a really rough day remembering what happened a year ago today. I know you and I talked shortly about your life at that point in time and what happened. I know on a previous podcast that we did together, and I'm very grateful that you had the opportunity then and now to speak about it. In the months since, have you come to kind of grips with it? I mean, as far as, the fact that he's gone, but the kind of legacy that he left. And I know so many people out there within the basketball world. The bigger question is as well, have they come to grips to it as well?
I don't think anybody has. Honestly, I don't think anybody has, simply because I think people are still in disbelief. I think some people probably haven't really grieved it. And it's just still hard to just to accept. And so, yeah, I don't think anybody will really come to grips.
I don't blame you. I mean, it's still quite a bit of take in. I mean, he was so much a part of basketball and being one of the greatest of all time, and to die just as he was getting on with the second part of his life. I mean, he had achieved an Academy Award already, and he had so many plans, I'm sure, as far as for what he wanted to go ahead and what he still wanted to accomplish. And to take someone away that soon, it's kind of rough because you see what kind of man he would have become.
Yeah, I think there was a kinder, gentler side. I mean, I have friends that played with him and played against him, and you hear the stories about how competitive he was, how difficult of a teammate he was, just how laser focused he was on basketball, and how I used to say, like, man, I wonder how is he going to live without basketball? Like, because he was so focused on it, I always wondered, like, how is he going to accept the second half of his life? And to my surprise, it seemed like he didn't miss it at all, because I feel like he knows that he gave 1,000% into it and he didn't leave with any regrets. So I think that probably made it easier. But I know for me personally, like I said, I just question, like, how is he going to, cope with the second half? Because if I'm not mistaken, when he retired, he had been in the NBA longer than he had not been in the NBA as far as his life.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, and he looked like he found his passion with coaching girls basketball, being a father, the Mamba businesses. And then I read that they said after his last game, he got up in the morning, worked out, and went to work the next day and to start the second half of his life. So he was different. For me, I think it's a little different for me because I did grow up as a Lakers fan. He was always someone that I did not like, not because of anything he did, just because he always kicked my guy's butt. Like, there's so many back-breaking shots that he hit. I know, I mean, the most obvious is obviously like the 2000 Western Conference Finals. There was another shot he hit. I can't remember what year it was. I want to say it was maybe 07, I believe. And it was a shot that he hit. And if he missed, I think it would have changed the seeding and where the Blazers would have played. And then I think Brandon Roy got hurt that game, which he ended up playing against Phoenix in the playoffs and kind of, ruining his body playing hurt. But it was just so many times I felt like, I'm rooting against the Lakers because, that's the rival. And I'd be so happy, like, oh, they're about to lose. And then you look and you like, you see his face and the composure. And you're like, okay, he's about to make a shot. And it's the Lakers are going to win. So not being a Lakers fan probably makes it a little different for me as opposed to someone that grew up as a huge Lakers fan. And especially like the kids who, if they were like 5 when he first started playing, their whole basketball lives, they, experienced Kobe in Lakers jersey. But I always admired just his drive and his determination and just his focus, which is a skill set in itself, And I always felt like if all of us, myself included, just had half of his work ethic and drive, we'd probably be a lot further along in life. I used to give examples. I used to run an internship program, and I would teach college students how to interview for jobs. And one of the things that I'd always tell them is, you have to talk about yourself. If I'm an employer and I say, give me 5 things about yourself why I should hire you, most people struggle, right? And the example I would always use is say, look, I'm a Blazers fan. Kobe has hurt my team so many times. But imagine you're going up against the interview for a job against someone with Kobe Bryant's self-confidence. If you can't match that confidence, then you're probably not going to get hired because he wouldn't have a problem discussing everything that he brings to the table, discussing his skill sets, discussing how it would be an asset, because he would be that confident in himself because he knows that he put in the work to be that qualified. So that was always an example I would use. So even as a non-Lakers fan, I always just admired how confident he was, which, people thought he was arrogant. But, I mean, he was just awesome at just all around. So I went on a tangent there, but it's definitely a rough day and a day that for the rest of our lives we'll always remember.
Absolutely. I don't think that would be any other way right there. And I'll tell you what, I'm just so thankful that, again, you got a chance to come on board today and share your thoughts. I mean, just such a day that we're going to remember now for the rest of our lives, and what happened, and so just cut so short. I mean, he didn't get a chance to finish that second part of his life. As you said, he was playing basketball in the NBA longer than he was actually, the first part of his life. So it just tells you exactly how much it meant to him, what he accomplished, and all the things that he had planned going forward cut so short. And obviously Gigi Bryant and all the other individuals that were part of that helicopter crash, and definitely their lives weren't able to be fulfilled as well. So, I mean, the Bryant family, again, my respects to them, and they're trying to get through a tough day, and they didn't want anybody in the NBA to go ahead and make a big thing as far as for today, as far as for the 3 games that were on tap today. So I think she wanted it very low key. Vanessa did. So I'm very respectful of that. But I do think that we had to go ahead and remember Kobe on his 1-year passing. And I just cannot thank you again for stopping by. But did you want to talk basketball now, or did you want to hop back on at another point in time? You tell me what's best for you today. I mean,
Yeah,
I know that a lot of people want it. We're just trying to do what they can to get on by. And with the Lakers doing very well right now at the top of the NBA with the NBA best record, I think there's a lot of things you can go by there. But MVP wise, I know LeBron sticks out, and I've said it already on the show. But tell me some of the other candidates that are out there in your mind as far as for MVP. I mean, Embiid, you got to start and stop with me with MVP, Joel Embiid, and also as well Nikola Jokic.
I think it's crazy to leave off Paul George. He is having a crazy year on paper.
Extremely efficient.
Yeah, I mean, it was like, I know he had a bad game a couple of days ago as far as efficiency-wise, but at one point it was like 50-50-90 from the floor on 25 points per game. So, and like right now, it's like 50, 48, 90, and he's shooting 48% from 3 while attempting 8 threes per game. And the Clippers, I mean, they just lost to the Hawks today, but they were, for the most part within a game of the Lakers. And I think at one point they were tied with the best record, and then they beat the Lakers head to head. So,
well, he and Kawhi weren't in it because of health and safety protocols. So they were not involved in the game because they were announced as part of being in quarantine. They're actually in LA with you right now. They're not on the road with the team until they get cleared, and then they might fly out at a later point on the road trip. So I think at this point, tremendous season, and you're right, he should be anyone's top 5 candidate right there for you. Anyone else stick out? Because again, Joel Embiid, Nikola Jokic, Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, I think he's averaging over 30 points a game, so he's having a sensational season as well.
Yeah, I mean, they're probably going to split votes, and I think it could be a situation like with LeBron. Maybe not this year. It doesn't seem like Anthony Davis is playing to his capabilities, but yeah, I mean, they could split because Kawhi is averaging like 26, 5, and 6, and he's also shooting over 50% from the floor and 40% from 3. But yeah, I mean, it's I think the league wanted to give the MVP award to Luka. He seemed like that was the guy that they probably want to push.
Sure was here in Vegas, I'll tell you that. He was the odds-on favorite.
Yeah, just because they're not going to give it to Giannis 3 times in a row. I figure Harden, no, Then with Harden and Brooklyn, I think him and KD would split votes. I assumed LeBron and AD would somehow split votes, and I just thought it would be Shaq and Kobe all over again, where neither one of them has the MVP trophies that they should have because they spent so much time together. But I'm sure they would trade them for, they're happy with the rings that they were able to win. But yeah, I mean, I think like right now it's probably going to be Embiid simply due to voter fatigue. And I mean, you can put LeBron as the MVP every year and you wouldn't go wrong with it. So who knows? I guess it would depend on if the season is finished and how many games teams play. Like, I just don't think every team is going to get to 72 games.
No, it doesn't look like it at this point. I mean, Washington's just back on the floor. Charlotte's still having issues. Anybody who's playing those teams are shorting themselves at least 1 or 2 games right there for you. So I don't think that the majority of the teams at this point look like they're going to hit the 70-game plateau to pay out the regional sports networks. Otherwise, they're going to have to go ahead and I think get a payment back that the regional sports networks are going to get back from the NBA teams if they don't meet their 70-game requirement, which is going to be, some money out of the league even more. And I know that's an issue going forward. I did want to ask you, Brooklyn, we briefly touched on it here with the MVP voting, but the big trade since we talked, James Harden has gone over to Brooklyn. He's become more the facilitator to start off with, playing more the point guard. Not scoring the way you want to see him scoring because he's been more of a facilitator. How do you think it's going so far? Defensive issues there galore. I know that's a problem for a lot of people. I know that's a problem for the team itself. But how do you think they're handling it so far?
Well, I mean, they only gave up 85 points last night. So that's 85 points in today's NBA
that's really good.
It's really good. As far as Harden, I think he's just trying to feel his way around. I mean, not a lot of practices. He's overpassing. I've been able to watch all their games. He's had a couple games, I think, where he didn't even take a shot in the first quarter. He's force-feeding passes to DeAndre. He's looking to get everybody involved. Seems like at some points he's trying to pick his spots. But they're going to need him to be aggressive. I think they'll figure it out. I mean, you look at when Miami, when they had their big three, I think they started off like 9-8. They struggled, and this was with a training camp.
Yeah.
The Nets haven't had any type of training camp. Probably, I don't even know if teams going to have a full practice right now, if I'm not mistaken. I know they can't have like 10 guys. They can't have a full team in meetings in some states. Like I think here in California, they have to they can't have their film sessions all together, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, I mean, I think they'll figure it out. I think they've replaced the Clippers now as the most hated team in the NBA. Because anybody that is considered a threat to the Lakers and their fan base is gonna really dislike that team. I mean, they're gonna get a big. They'll be able to get another big, whether it's the buyout market or some 3-team trade. I mean, I saw the rumors about JaVale. Possibly, I don't know if he's necessarily the answer, but I really like Reggie Perry. I mean, I think he's young and he's a second-round pick, but I think he could end up being one of those guys like what Golden State had, like Jordan Bell or Kevin Looney, guys that came in as a backup and just kind of played their role well or efficiently for, the minutes they were given. So I really like what they have there. Just the problem is DeAndre just doesn't want to go out on the perimeter, and teams are going to be able to eat on mid-range shots because he wants to be near the rim so he can get his rebounds. But that's their problem. If they can find another big that can switch and at least, contain ball handlers and not be able to break the defense down, I think they'll be okay.
You and I had spoken before about our picks for the season, and you and I both picked Brooklyn versus the Lakers. I ended up that time picking the Lakers, in which I'm still holding on. You at that time picked Brooklyn. Has your thought process changed with the trade now that actually the big three there, a little bit less depth, but you think they're going to get a big. I think they're going to get a big at some point. I don't know if their defensive issues, like you said, which was shown very well last night as far as being on the good side, for the most part, has still been kind of shaky. But going forward, your thoughts on the Brooklyn team now? I mean, has your perception changed any on it after the James Harden trade?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're going to be tough to stop and close the games because they have three guys that can get their shot at any time, three guys that can go for 40. And, depending on who you see it, if Kyrie is your third option, that's a hell of a third option. If James Harden is your third option, I think they're going to be tough. They're just going to have to figure it out, get some time together. But the way this season is going, I think there could be a break again. It could be a pause. And whoever comes out of that break with chemistry and is going to be the best team. I mean, we saw it last year. There were the rumors that the Lakers were practicing during the quarantine or whatever. And if I'm not mistaken, the Lakers didn't look that good in the seeding games, but they were able to turn it on because they had the two best players on the floor every night.
Yeah.
And then all they needed was their role players, guys like Rondo to come in and make plays. KCP was big. And I think if Brooklyn can just kind of figure things out, it's going to be tough to beat that team seven times in a row.
You mean in a best of seven?
In a best of seven, yes.
Well, it's going to be very interesting to see. Again, you and I had them for the finals. I know you had them winning. I had the Lakers winning. I don't think that's changed. I agree with you because I think the Brooklyn 3 is better than the Milwaukee 3, and it matches up a little bit better against Philadelphia. We'll see if Joel Embiid would have to dominate thoroughly for them to go ahead and surpass Brooklyn in a 7-game series, because that's the one glaring weakness I think that Brooklyn has, because I don't think DeAndre at this point in time, 2015 DeAndre is not coming through that door anytime soon. So you're going to get 2020 DeAndre, and I don't think that's going to be able to be enough to guard someone like Joel. So I think that's going to be an issue for them unless they find some way to go ahead and find, like you said, another big with maybe 5 more fouls on them to go ahead and help out on that. But before we head on out,
I want to add something real fast. I think Bam had a big game.
Yes.
But I think the way to beat Brooklyn with your big is if you have a big that spaces the floor. So if you have a big that needs post touches, I think that helps DeAndre because he gets to play post defense and he gets to stay near the basket. But if it's if it's a situation where you have a 4-man on the floor that's spacing the floor and DeAndre has to switch and leave the paint, he's going to give up plenty of open shots. So, I think, and which sounds weird, he would rather face Embiid than somebody like Vucevic, who may stay outside and knock down 5 threes and force him to defend out of his comfort zone. But,
would you consider Embiid, because as far as an outside shooter, because he does like to go outside. He'll go like 4 or 5 times. I'm not sure exactly if Doc Rivers loves that plan, but it's almost like he wants to go out there. So you got to go ahead, because all the dirty work he does inside, you got to go ahead and feed him 4 or 5 times a game from 3. So I don't know if that qualifies for what you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, if he falls in love with it, then that actually helps the Nets out.
Yeah.
But, like the game where they played Orlando, Vooch was just, getting wide open looks. He just run a pick and pop, and DeAndre would half close out, but he wants his rebounds. That was his issue in Dallas, is he didn't care about playing defense. He wanted his rebounds. And he wanted to block shots, which sometimes he would leave his assignment to chase a block, which would leave the big open for a putback or a dump off. We saw Jared Allen just get a lot of hustle points because DeAndre was out of position because he was looking for blocks. So, but yeah, they have to find another big. But I think they may be able to find like an energy guy in the G League, because you don't really need a big to score. If you can just find a big that can move his feet, switch, play defense, and catch, he'll get plenty of open looks. So I don't think they need like a big time. And the JaVale is just like DeAndre all over again. So I don't know if that helps them out a lot.
Well, I was going to go ahead and ask you real quick before we head on out, and that's the Western Conference. And I know you and I could talk all day about the Clippers and the Lakers and how successful they are and how well they've done so far this season. I had mentioned in our top 5 NBA teams last week to the Lakerholics that I put the Jazz currently at number 3, and a very fast rising number 3, because I think they've won 8 in a row. They've looked very good together. I mean, they're a unit that's now stuck over a year, especially Mike Conley has now looked more like Mike Conley that I think a lot of people thought that was going to happen last year. What are your thoughts on the Western Conference? Denver now started to win again with 2 impressive road victories against Phoenix. Portland, I'm not sure what you're getting in Portland, because one day they're looking real good, but they've got some injuries. And then the next day they're losing against, was it the Knicks or was it Oklahoma City?
They beat the Knicks. They lost to the Thunder.
Yeah. So I want to hear your thoughts on the Western Conference as it stands right now before we head on out.
Well, the thing about the West, I feel like everybody is talking about the Lakers and everybody is penciling them in to get to the finals and possibly repeat. I think it's taken a lot of pressure off the other teams. I felt like last year there was a tremendous amount of pressure on the Clippers. And I mean, maybe it's the way they handled it. Maybe it's Patrick Beverley's talking that put all this pressure on them. But I think for the Clippers, I think it's good that nobody's really talking about them like they were last year. The expectations are a lot less. So I think they're going to be a lot better in the playoffs. Utah, nobody's talking about Utah. I mean, it's just, small market team. Arguably, Rudy Gobert. I mean, Rudy Gobert to me is their most impactful player. And I've heard this from players that play on the Jazz, and they're like, everything changes with him on defense. I mean, he's our identity. And, when he's not on the floor, we can't really defend. So, yeah, I mean, I think Utah, and they'll probably make another sneaky good move at the deadline like they did last year with Jordan Clarkson, maybe adding another shooter. But as far as Portland, they've lost 2 starters. But I want to say they're like 2 games over 500 still, which, yeah, they're 9-7. They're in the 5th spot right now. If you would have told me a team would be in the 5th spot without 2 starters, I mean, that would be – I guess with this year, a lot of teams have been without major players, whether it's due to injuries or the COVID protocols. But I mean, I think the Blazers will be fine if they can just hang on and be, stay in this range till they get healthy. I think they'll be fine. But they have to get something out of Covington and Jones. Offensively, they're not getting anything out of them. I don't think they're averaging 12 points a game combined.
And that's very sad to see, because I know you and I were expecting a lot more. I mean, obviously to give them a defensive boost, but to give them some kind of offensive efficiency from there, and they're not getting it done. And like you said, with Jurkic out, and also you have CJ McCollum out, and you have Collins out. I mean, again,
never played, so I don't even consider him being out
because he was injured last year too. So
the Blazers took him over Bam Adebayo. I mean, that's our championship right there. We just draft Bam, and that changes everything. That kills the lack of defense. Another playmaker, athleticism, like that move right there cost us, in my opinion, a championship.
Well, right now though, they're 9-7. They're still doing pretty good in the Western Conference. Right now, battling it out with the Nuggets, who are finally finding some sort of consistency in their game. Because it was just very sad to see Jokic having this miraculous season and just the rest of the team just not needing where it needed to be. I mean, defensively, they were shambles of what they once were. But it's good to see them finding their legs. Phoenix, What about Dallas, though, before we head on out? Dallas has been struggling. I mean, it just seems like not only like you were talking about with Luka and being the MVP early on favorite and not happening because he's struggling so bad, but I mean, there's a lot of issues going on or on the surface, I think, from what I've seen at Dallas.
Yeah, I mean, I think Porzingis has only played maybe 3 games, 3 out of maybe 15 or 16. Finney Smith and Richardson seem like they've been out for the last week or two. Um, Kleber's out. I mean, COVID has really hit them hard. I don't think their projected starting lineup or even like their top 6 guys have all played a game together. So they're just kind of holding on. Right now, they're a game under 500. And I think Dallas's biggest issue is that everything is so reliant on Luka. There's nobody else on the team that can really create shots for themselves or for others. Like they're starting Jalen Brunson at the 2, which I like Brunson a lot, but he's been starting Trey Burke. So they're starting some really small guards, and I think, I know Richardson is supposed to improve their defense and toughness, but I think losing Seth Curry hurts a lot because, when Luka was on the floor with Seth and Hardaway on the other end, you could not help off either one of those guys. And so now, they've been playing Wesley Iwundu. I think he started, and also Josh Green. And if you saw the Toronto game, Luka faced boxes and elbows the whole game. He didn't have any driving lanes. So I think they'll be fine once they get their core back. And because I think just yesterday you had Richardson, Finney Smith, Kleber, and Powell out the game. So you can pretty much say their projected starting lineup for the year would have been Luka, Richardson, Hardaway, Powell, and Porzingis, or either if Powell isn't starting, then Finney Smith. So they're missing like 4 of their rotation guys. So, but I think they'll figure it out.
Before we end on out, any surprise teams either which way that are really disappointing you that you didn't think would happen, or surprising you that are doing that well?
Oklahoma City. That's the biggest surprise to me. The biggest disappointment to me is the Pelicans, but Oklahoma City, they are 7-9, which they're 2 games under 500. But if you would have told me that they were going to be 1-15 after their first 16 games, I would have believed it. Like on paper, they don't look good. I think right now their second leading scorer is Lugens Dort, and their 4th leading scorer is either Isaiah Roby or Hamidou Diallo.
Yeah,
but they're competitive. They're 7-9. I mean, they beat my Blazers yesterday, and the fact that they have a better record and they have 2 more wins than the Pelicans it's a shame. I mean, the Pelicans are just, I don't know. Like I had a debate with somebody, I want to say it was like during the bubble, over which team has a brighter future, Memphis or the Pelicans. And everybody said the Pelicans. And I'm like, they look good on paper, but I don't think their pieces fit.
Yeah.
And the Stan Van Gundy hire, it doesn't look good at this point. I mean, it's still a small sample size, but they're playing slower. And I think with a young team like that, they need to run. I don't like the Steven Adams fit with Zion. I think Zion needs to be with the floor spacer, but floor spacers that can rebound and defend are pretty unique. So it's going to be tough for them to find, a good complementary piece for him. But Lonzo he's just, I honestly feel like if he wasn't Lonzo Ball and if he wasn't the second pick in the draft, he wouldn't be starting.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw something today, and I saved it. He is on pace to become the second player in NBA history to log more than 30 minutes per game and shoot below 40% from the floor, 30% from 3, and 60% from the free throw line.
Man. Hopefully his brother will have a better impact in the league. I'm assuming as such. I've seen as such, so I'm hoping as such. Yeah. But we'll wait and see, my friend.
If you're a Lakers fan, even though you already have Anthony Davis or whatever, but you could have had Jason Tatum.
Yeah, Tell me about it. I get reminded of that a lot, believe me. And I'll be reminded of it later this week when they meet when they play the Celtics later this week. So believe me, as I'm watching the game, that's what I'm going to be thinking about. But my friend, it's been awesome having you on board once again. Once again, it is Rafael Barlowe from NBA Draft Junkies. Before we head on out, what you got working on? I know you haven't touched your site in a couple weeks, but Michael Weisenberg's there. He's waiting. His conversation's there, plus an introduction to the 2021 draft class. But before we head on out, what you working on for NBA Draft Junkies?
Yeah, I have 4 videos done, and I just need to add the voiceover. The past few weeks, I've been doing some NFL Combine stuff. No, I'm not starting a NFL Draft Junkies page. I used to be a huge college football fan. I'm from Nebraska, so I used to know every recruit. I knew I knew college football like I knew basketball. Funny story, and I'll get into what I'm doing. So I haven't watched college football in years, maybe like 4 years. So I do some training, and at this gym I train at, there's a bunch of guys that are preparing for the combine. And one of the ladies that works at the gym, she suggested that if I wanted to do some filming or take pictures, because the combine is going to be virtual this year, maybe I can get the contract, working with at the gym and doing some stuff for the NFL. So I've been working on that. So I'm talking to this guy, and he's like the running backs are sitting out and they're doing their drills, and this guy, he's sitting out. So he says to me, he says, are you taking pictures or video? Do you work for Exos, which is the gym? I say, no, I'm just, doing the stuff and maybe possibly. So we start talking. We have a 45-minute conversation. He tells me that he's from California and he went to Alabama. And so I'm like, I said, you just played. This is probably like 3 days after the national championship. He's like, yeah. So he says, I got to sit out. I can't work out till Monday, yada, yada, yada. And we're sitting there talking, like literally just talking about sports. And I go home and I said, let me look up and see who this is on the Alabama roster that I was just talking to. Didn't realize I was talking to Najee Harris.
Oh my gosh.
45 minutes. So that's just how bad I am with college football now. So, but yeah, I've been doing that. It's kind of slowed up my progress. But I have 4 videos that I'm ready to upload. I just have to do the voiceovers. I talked myself into doing the voiceovers instead of just dropping the video with a little clips here.
I kind of helped you with those talking overs because I kind of wanted you to do that. I thought it was a better look. Yep.
So that's the hold up. And then, but my goal this week, like I'm in LA and I have more time than normal. I mean, I'm only working like 1 hour a day here. So I didn't bring my mic and stuff, but I'll have time to watch more prospects and put together some clips. So next week I should have at least 6 or 7 videos that I'll put out.
Oh, that's awesome to hear. But it's so funny because Najee Harris, I want to tell everybody that Najee Harris is the star running back for the national champion Alabama Crimson Tide. I think if anybody's out there that knows or got a chance to see the game, they know his, I think he hurdled, if I remember correctly, one of the players that was on the other side. And I remember him distinctly on his great running ability. And I think he's got definitely a great future in the NFL going forward. But yeah, very athletic. Saw him on the dime leap over a defender, and I was just like, yeah, that kid's got it. That kid's got it. But yeah, I'm glad you got a chance to talk to him at least.
Yeah, man, I've talked to him a few times since then. Extremely nice guy. I mean, like I said, I didn't know who it was, but there was nothing about him that said, I'm a star. Like, in my mind, I was thinking like, okay, maybe he's a hopeful. Maybe he's going to the combine and he's training for it. Just as nice, one of the nicest athletes I've ever met. And so yeah, it was pretty cool. So now I'm trying to catch up and watch college football and study because I don't even know who these players I'm talking to every day. And I ended up like in their Instagram and just tagging them on pictures, and coming to find out it's like 4 or 5 guys that are projected to go in the first round. So I've been working on that, and then maybe if I keep my fingers crossed, best case scenario, trying to get a contract to do some stuff in the G League bubble. So
I'm hoping for you, man. I'm pulling
yeah.
for you indeed. And Najee Harris obviously is expected to go very high on that. I'm surprised he wasn't talking about a pro day because they usually have like an Alabama pro day for specifically for them.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they're going to have one, but right now everybody's preparing, working on their like 40 times, and they're preparing in different, like I know there's a facility in Phoenix. There's one here in Southern California. Then they'll go back to their schools for pro day. But this was a good week for me to be here in LA because most of the guys are in Mobile for the Senior Bowl.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a skeleton crew of guys that are still in Dallas training. It's like mostly the guys that are that left school early, that weren't seniors.
Yeah. One last thing, when you're talking about all-star games, is the NBA might actually they're working on possibly agreeing to an NBA all-star game in March. Like it or don't like it? I think it just adds additional risk.
Yeah, I mean, I figured they would just because of the networks. I mean, you figure if you have an all-star game in March, and even if you have like the dunk contest, or I mean, you won't have all the sponsored events, but I think that's big for the NBA as far as exposure. And I figured that they were going to do it. Now, Atlanta's probably not the best choice of cities, but I think the reason they're doing it is because the Turner crew won't have to
go that far.
Yeah, to go that far.
Plus, it's obviously one of the biggest hubs for airlines, and it's one of the easiest places to get to for all the different various airlines and whatnot. They're all going and merging into one place.
Yeah, but that's the thing where like, are they going to make them stay in a bubble for a week if they fly, unless they fly private? I know last year I went to Chicago for All-Star game, and while I'm at baggage claim, I'm standing next to Aaron Gordon. Like, he flew on a regular flight like I did. So I wonder, are the players going to have to fly private, or if they fly, regular, then are they going to have to quarantine? Because I think the airport is one of the riskier places to be. So
it's risky, but I can understand the financial implications, which would be the only reason I could see why these players are doing it and why the league's okaying it, because of the financial implications involved for both sides. Bonuses, obviously, for the players, and incentives are there on their side, plus also as well for the league. It's a way to go ahead and get that one big shot of adrenaline as far as advertising is concerned. But for me, I see it as a big risk on both sides.
I mean, to me, this whole season is a risk. So, an All-Star Weekend is a big moneymaker, because even if they don't have fans there, if you're selling 2021 All-Star Game sweatshirts and paraphernalia at the airport in Atlanta, I think it can generate money. And then obviously, you got somebody like LaMelo Ball, whose All-Star Game is made for him, or like the rookie game. Like, if I read correctly, it's supposed to be a scaled down version, but I imagine they're still going to have the dunk contest, 3-point contest, rookie game, and the only differences are going to be, maybe like the celebrity all-star games and just the whole fan interaction thing. But I mean,
hopefully no Kenny Smith party.
No, there definitely won't be any parties.
Well, I'll tell you what, my friend, it's going to be very interesting to see if they do actually come away with an NBA All-Star game. And again, I appreciate all your time with talking about Sekou Smith, Kobe Bryant, of course, on the year after his passing, and all your thoughts on the NBA. Again, it's my good friend Rafael Barlowe from NBA Draft Junkies. Please check out his site, NBADraftJunkies.com, and of course, his popular YouTube page, NBA Draft Junkies, the Run the Floor podcast. And you're still, I'm sure, on radio as well, correct?
Yep, I just did a show a couple days ago. I did my mock draft. So I have the audio version, and the audio version of my mock lottery is also on my podcast, so the NBA Draft Junkies podcast. So it's there. I want to put it on YouTube, but it was 55 minutes, and I just recorded it as a podcast. So I'm trying to figure out how many videos and graphics am I going to put up for 55 minutes to cover the whole thing. So I have the time this week. It's just a matter of hotel Wi-Fi. Is it going to be good enough to upload a 55-minute video on YouTube? It may take 3 days, so we'll see.
We'll see. I have lived through a hotel Wi-Fi. I know that can be a very painful situation for podcasters, indeed. But check out Rafael Barlowe on Dash Radio. Monday still?
Yep, Monday at 10 a.m. Central. So what is that? 8 a.m. Pacific and 11 a.m. Eastern. I mean, is there anybody in the Mountain Time Zone? It's never listed. It's always, it's always Eastern, Central, or Pacific. So, but yeah, it's every Monday at so I guess on the West Coast, like I said, 8 a.m.
Well, I'll tell you what, if Utah or Denver wins the NBA title, they might just go ahead and recognize Mountain Time from here on out. But we'll wait and see, my friend. It is Rafael Barlowe from NBA Draft Junkies. I'll tell you what, if you cannot do yourself any better by checking out all the NBA draft prospects coming up for 2021's NBA draft. Plus, there's so much more. Check out Rafael's great stuff at NBA Draft Junkies on YouTube, NBADraftJunkie.com, and of course his podcast, the NBA Draft Junkies. Well, my friend, I really, truly appreciate it. Want to check in 2 or 3 weeks? Check up on the NBA?
Anytime. Just let me know.
You got it, my friend. Always good to hear from you. I want to again thank you so much for your thoughts on Sekou Smith. Again, all respects to his family. Just again, our condolences. This coronavirus it's doing way too much damage and taking way too many people away from us. And of course, we remember Kobe. And again, I appreciate all your thoughts on the NBA as well. But it is Rafael Barlowe. Hopefully, you'll get a chance to check him out very soon at NBA Draft Junkies. And you're always a great part of the Lakers Fast Break podcast.